In here could take a seat, and we can get this meeting started. Or if you do wish to talk, you can go ahead and step outside into the hallway. We do have two applications and two hearings tonight. The first is a variance request, and then the second hearing is for the cell tower site. So we are going to do the variance request first, and then we'll get to the proposed conditional use permit for the Wolf Cell site. So, as a quick introduction, my name is Carl Granrath. I'm the hearing examiner for tonight's hearings. So, the purpose of the hearings tonight is for me to gather evidence and receive testimony from the applicants as well as from the public, so that we can establish a thorough record from which I will perform a legal review based on the evidence and testimony received prior to tonight's hearing and from tonight's hearing. And then I write a recommendation to your county commissioners. Your county commissioners ultimately have the authority to grant these requests, which will be based off of the record we complete tonight and my recommendation based on my legal analysis. So I see we do have a bunch of people who have signed up to give testimony, and if you do wish to give testimony, you'll need to fill out one of these sheets. I'm sure you saw that on your way in. If you are connected on Zoom, I will give you an opportunity to speak as well as for public comment on Zoom. I'll let you know when you can unmute and give your comments. As far as that goes, each person is entitled to 3 minutes to give comments on whichever. I'm assuming everybody's here for the cell site, so you have up to 3 minutes to give your public comment for that application. As well as we do have one of our rarely used procedures that I see here, but very effective, where we have 10 people represented by a group representative, and you'll be going first for the opposed comments, and we'll deal with that when we get to that time. Another quick housekeeping: the applicant has 30 minutes to present their application initially. Before that, actually, staff will be introducing the applications, providing information as part of the record about the application and their analysis of the request. And then the applicant will have their 30 minutes to present their application. Then we'll have public comment, and then the applicant will have a final 15 minutes rebuttal. If they want to address any specific comments or add any additional information, that's entirely up to them. So, and one final thing, for your public comments, and I'll remind again when we get started, please direct all of your comments towards me. And remember that this is being recorded. This is an open public hearing, and this is becoming part of the official record from which this application will be decided. So please direct your comments towards me. Please no, hollering or talking from the stands, so to speak, so we can get a nice clean record, and people's comments can be recorded effectively. So with that, again, I know most of you are here for the conditional use permits cell site, but we do have a variance request that will be going first. So Mr. Finkel, if you could come up, variance 23-0008, 605. We'll start this. Go ahead, Mr. Finkel.
Good evening. For the record, Vlad Finkel with Kootenai County Community Development. Can everybody hear me now?
Yeah.
Perfect. Good evening. For the record, Vlad Finkel with Kootenai County Community Development. I will try to be as brief as possible, as I understand that the project after this one may take some time. This is a request for a variance to a couple of different setback requirements in the restricted residential zone. The applicants are Tatiana and Roman Skripnik, and the specific variance requests are to the flanking street requirement as well as the side yard setback requirement. The subject property is located just west of Hayden Lake, specifically at the intersection of Strathorn, Stratford, and Oxford Drive. Basically, the subject property is bounded by 3 public roads on 3 different sites. The property in question is roughly 1/4 of an acre in size. As you can see, it's fairly level. There's minimal vegetation, if any, on the subject property. It is currently bisected by an existing public road, and I'll get into the details of how that road was constructed and where it was constructed later on. The prescribed setbacks in the restricted residential zone for the side yard setback are 10 feet, and they are 15 feet for flanking street. Flanking street is basically the setback on a side street that is not considered to be a primary access road to the subject property. In this case, the primary access will be Oxford Drive, and based on the comments that we did receive from the Highway District, it is the only location where the access can be granted for safety and sight distance reasons. So in this case, as you can see, it's interesting enough, we were unable to come up with the information in our records, as well as the information that we got from the Highway District, that neither party could find how the original plat and the location of this property in relation to Stratford Drive was subsequently amended to have the road bisect the property. Previously, the property line was supposed to be somewhere in this location, and the road was going to continue along the southern portion of the plat adjacent to the golf course. We don't have any record as to how that road was shifted and how the boundary line was adjusted in the manner where it now bisects the property. So that's something that's still a mystery to us, but I don't know if it really changes the facts of this case based on the undue hardship that the applicant is claiming. And the primary or the main hardship in this case is limited area for development. What the applicant is asking is they're seeking a 13-foot variance to the flanking street setback by having the residence 2 feet from the 50-foot right-of-way, as well as a 5-foot variance setback from the north end of the north side of the property, where it requires a 10-foot side yard setback. As you can see going back, if the strict letter of the law were to apply, the applicant would have limited area for development, and you could have, I think on this end, I have a hard time seeing, but you're looking at about 15, 16 feet in width, and based on the curvature of the road, you would have approximately 20 feet in width for the building envelope if the strict letter of the law were to apply. What the applicant is proposing, they're proposing a residence, of course, with a driveway on the northeast corner of the property off of Oxford Drive, and they would have a 2-foot separation from the 50-foot wide right-of-way. I'd like to clarify that pursuant to state law and based on the Kootenai County Land Use and Development Code, any road that does not have a conveyed a right-of-way through a plat or through some sort of deed of conveyance has the prescriptive benefit, or has the benefit of having a prescriptive easement that is 50 feet wide centered on the road. So basically, the prescriptive easement would be 25 feet from the center line of the road, heading north and then heading south. So the structure would be set 2 feet away from the 25-foot distance as measured from the center line of the road. These are some of the photos of the property in question. As you can see, it is a very small site. In fact, when I did a site inspection, I met with the neighbors who were frankly very surprised that this property was going to be developed. This is a development that is dating back to probably the 60s, maybe the 70s. And due to its limited size, I think the neighbors thought that this was just part of the road system and that it wasn't eligible for any permits. We have conducted our research, and as you saw on the plat map, this is a bona fide parcel of land that's eligible for permits. Yes, it has limitations on development, and that's one of the arguments that made by the applicant in this case for the approval of the variance. These are some of the renderings of the property, or excuse me, of the structure in question. It would be fairly narrow residence, which would be 2 stories tall. The way the applicant had designed the roof system or the roof trusses is that the water the stormwater runoff from the roof would not be conveyed onto the adjacent right-of-way. The applicant would be subject to maintaining all the stormwater runoff off the 50-foot right-of-way for Stratford Drive. So we made sure that in order to have the structure so close to the road, it wouldn't have any impact on the adjacent public right-of-way or have any conveyance of stormwater runoff into the roadway itself. Through the agency comment period, none of the agencies had any concerns. There are some impact fees that the city of Hayden Lake will require because the property is located within the city of Hayden Lake area of city impact. However, that will be handled as part of the building permit application should the variance be approved. The highway district, of course, had granted approval, but they did restrict access to be located on the northeast corner of the property. Based on the layout of the residence, I don't find that the applicant has any issue with that. I believe all the remaining agencies really had no concerns with this request either. We did receive one comment in opposition. I don't recall that there was any explanation as to why, but I would assume that the expectation from the neighbors was that this is such a small area for development that nobody really thought that it could be eligible for development permits. Staff analysis is very basic. We do find that there is an undue hardship based on the characteristics of the site. First one is, well, there's 2 at least. The area for development is very limited based on the location of the road. The road is bisecting the property, and as I said, the more unknown factor in this case is how did the road end up being constructed outside of the originally dedicated right-of-way, and how did the property line get moved through either through a boundary line adjustment or through some sort of other process to be in its current location. I don't know if it's really worth going back in history to make that determination. We're dealing with the facts as they are today, and we do find that the applicant has a legitimate hardship. We do support their application so long as they comply with agency comments and they do address stormwater runoff accurately through the site disturbance process and building permit process. The applicant in this case is not physically available today, but they are on Zoom, and they would like to present their case right after I'm done. So with that, my presentation is done. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Yeah, just a quick point to clarify and get hammered down. So 25 feet from the center of the roadway is our prescriptive easement, but it still looks like the edge of the structure is going to be approximately 15 or so feet from the edge of the roadway.
I believe I had that on a different, if you, I don't know how the road, why the road is, but perhaps the applicant can.
I think I saw it in the file. I just forgot the number I wanted to have.
I think the applicant can testify to that.
Okay.
I think they do have that information. I believe it's a really good question. However, we typically do not assess distances from actual driving surface unless there's a caveat in our code that states measurements for structures for setback shall be measured from the edge of driving surface when there's no known easement of dedication. So or easement of conveyance, I'm sorry. In this case, because we know that there's a 50-foot prescriptive right-of-way for this road, we do not take measurements from the actual road surface. It has to be from the edge of easement.
Okay, thank you. All right, if the applicant is on Zoom, Mr. Callahan, will you get them connected?
Yes, sir. Mr. Roman, if you would go ahead and you've unmuted yourself, so go ahead and announce your address, who you are, and then proceed.
Hello. My name is Roman Skripnik, and I'm owner of this property, 10-6 41 Oxford Drive. And as a representative from Planning Department just presented my case, he did a really good job and pretty much explained all my presentation was planning to say. It's just a couple of stuff I want to just add to what he already explained to you guys. We bought this property around 2.5 years ago, and when we was buying this property, we knew that this Oxford and the Stratford Road is cutting through this property. But when we was buying this property, we've been told by real estate agency who was selling this property that Stratford Road is private road, and when we're going to be building house, it will be treated as private road, and it will be 15 feet from the edge of asphalt. And after we purchase this property and start doing own research, talking to planning department regarding building house over there, we realized, and after talking to planning department and highway district, we realized that it used to be private road, but because highway district been maintaining this road for a while, it became public. I think they told us for approximately 7, 8 years they've been maintaining this road. So after it became public, it changed from 15 feet from the edge of the asphalt to 25 feet from the center, and plus 15 feet from the road easement at the Franklin Street setback. And kind of to answer question, how far will be structure from the edge of the asphalt by applying for this variance. So if it's going to be only 2 feet from the 25 feet setback as a public road, structure will be 17 feet from the edge of the asphalt. So pretty much we're going to be getting even less than we was originally was thinking. We're going to get 15 feet from the edge of the asphalt as a private road, not public road. And also we're asking this 5 feet from the north instead of 10 feet, kind of so we have more room to build it. And pretty much everything that the planning department explained to you guys, it's pretty much my presentation. We kind of I'm not sure if you guys have but on file we kind of upgraded front elevation to make more suitable for neighborhood, more add more craftsman style to the structure. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, thank you. I don't believe we have anyone here who's intending to comment on this application. If anyone is here or is on Zoom and wishes to offer public comment for this variance request, now is the time. Seeing no one here, Mr. Callahan, anyone raising their hand on Zoom?
No, sir.
Okay, I have no questions for the applicant and no further questions for Mr. Finkel. So 6:20 p.m. I'm going to close the public hearing for variance 23-0008. And again, Mr. Skripnik, my recommendation will be forwarded to staff within the next 2 weeks, and they will get this scheduled to go in front of your county commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, so 6:20, then I will keep us moving and open the public hearing for CUP 23-0003 Wolf Cell Site. And I believe we have Ms. Hilland for the county to present the application.
Good evening, Mr. Hearing Examiner. Amy Hillen, planner for Kootenai County. For the record, the application before you is for a wireless communication facility, also referred to as a cell tower. The applicants in this case are Weiss Towers LLC and Inland Cellular. And my presentation will be a brief synopsis of my staff report, which was included in the HE packet for you, and it's part of the public record. Oh, one sec. Should work. Oh. Oh, okay. Okay. The parcel is approximately 78 acres. It's located east of the city of Coeur d'Alene, east of Wolf Lodge Bay specifically. It's located on Alder Creek Road. It's also north and adjacent to Interstate 90. It's located approximately 2.8 miles east of the intersection between Wolf Lodge Creek Road and Alder Creek Road. The proposal is to construct a 150-foot lattice tower and equipment shelter. The tower itself will be within a leased area to be fenced. That leased area is 100 by 100-foot area, and the main purpose is to fill the gap of communication along Interstate 90. And you'll see the renderings here of the tower, and you'll see the aerial view of the tower and its equipment shelter. The subject site is located in the rural zone, and according to the comprehensive plan, the land use designation is resource recreation. When we look at the site plan provided by the applicant, the area highlighted in red, that's the 78-acre parcel itself. And the leased area is that yellow area in the southeast portion of the property. And there's an existing egress traveling from Alder Creek Road to the south site. As we zoom in, you can see where the cell tower will sit within that 100-foot by 100-foot leased area on the site. When we look at Google Earth, this is just an approximate map to show the topography, and you'll notice it does vary widely in topography. And then again, you'll see Alder Creek Road to the north here, that access road, and then the cell tower in the southeast portion of the property. When we look at the project overview, I'm going to show some radio frequency maps, but just to give a description of what is being measured. Each of the maps measure RSRPs, which are reference signal received power levels, and they're measured in dBMs or decibel milliwatts, and they're always negative. So the closer you get to zero, the higher the power of signal. And so according to the applicants, the information they provided, a good signal is minus 75 dBMs nearest to the cell site, and then minus 20 dBMs as you travel the edge of the cell coverage. So we were provided 2 different RF maps, actually 3 different. This was provided by Verizon. And the target area is here, where our subject parcel is, and the red dot is the proposed cell site. And when you look at this map, and I know the key is not very easy to read, but essentially the cooler colors or blue and greens, that's low coverage. And then as you move to the warmer colors, your bright green, yellow, or red, that's better cell coverage. So when we look at the target area, Verizon states that existing coverage is anywhere between minus 100 dBMs and minus 110 dBMs, or simply non-existent. On this map, you'll also see what the applicant used to show the nearest tower in the area and its coverage. In this case, within, I think it's within a 4-mile radius, there's another tower by the American Tower Company, or AMT, and that they also use this map, but I added it just to show existing coverage in my presentation today. And then the proposed coverage, again, the warmer colors are better coverage as you move to the cell site. This is what they expect the coverage to be when the cell tower is installed. and Verizon predicts minus 70 dBMs, between minus 70 and 110 dBMs. Inland Cellar also provided a proposed coverage map, which is very similar, but this provides a better picture of it. In this case, they have 3 levels. Red is the better coverage, and yellow is the lower end of the coverage. And they predict anywhere between minus 80 dBMs and 110 dBMs. When we look at photo simulations, the applicant did do a balloon test. The balloon measured to be 120 feet, so they predicted upwards to 150 feet, just to give a photo simulation of what this would look like on the site. The first picture on the left is taken from that access road as you travel from Alder Creek Road, looking southward. The next photo is taken from I-90 facing northward toward the property. On the next slide here on the left, that's as you travel westward along I-90 toward the property, what they expect the photo rendering might show. And then on the right is taken from the Tower access road and what that will look like there. When we reached out to public agencies, Eastside Highway District will require a new approach, but they will enforce seasonal weight limits in the springtime. Kootenai County Fire and Rescue did not voice any concerns. Kootenai County Community Development, our building division, there was a public comment asking about the building permit process, so I added some additional information here. It'll be a commercial building permit with a site plan, engineering, structural analysis, and they will also ask for any third-party inspection. So this would likely, well, it will be FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, would be the third party there. And then electrical work will be done permitted by the state. Panhandle Health, there is no wastewater being proposed, but they did add that an application would be required if ever that happens. And then the applicant did provide a letter from the Federal Aviation Administration, and they stated that it does not exceed obstruction standards, would not be a hazard to air navigation. Marking and lighting are not necessary for aviation safety. They also stated that a Form 7460 would be required. Kootenai County does not have a direct contact with the FAA, so we do rely heavily on our specific division of aeronautics through ITD, the Idaho Transportation Department, and they provided their own analysis. Location of tower does not pose a hazard. They did recommend a collision avoidance light, and then they also quoted that there's a very specific form, an FAA Form 7460. And the Kootenai County Airport, who we also asked for recommendations or some consultation on this, they concurred with the analysis by FAA and also quoted that Form 7460. Yeah. Oh, I was going to say something about the collision avoidance light. If FAA is, bottom line states that it's not required, we probably wouldn't ask for it. In case it's a nuisance, a blinking light in the area. But at time of building permit, the applicant will be required to get FAA approval before we issue any type of building permit applications. During the public comment period, we did receive 58 comments. The staff report did say 55, but all 58 were included in your HE packet for the hearing examiner. 56 were opposed. There was one comment that didn't mark what their position was. And then we did get that comment about building permit requirements, which I described earlier. And concerns include aesthetics, light and noise pollution, health concerns, increase of fire risk, and location within a residential area. Overall, staff finds that all requirement standards have been met. The applicant has provided sufficient application meeting Kootenai County Code requirements. And just to summarize some of the major points, staff will recommend that the tower be a neutral color, but there's no additional landscaping will be required. There's a Telecommunication Act of 1996. It's important to note that we're really limited on as a local jurisdiction We are not permitted to deny an application on the basis of environmental effects of radio frequency emissions. And we do feel that the applicant has demonstrated that there is lack of cell coverage, and staff recommends approval of the request. And I stand for any questions that you have.
Yeah, I may have some more for you later on in the hearing. Just one real quick. For the photos,
Yep.
I don't believe I saw any. Did the county see any that were from Alder Creek Road? I think that first one was on the parcel, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Was there analysis or any photos taken
I
from
don't-
Alder Creek Road or?
I don't believe so, not directly from Alder Creek.
Okay. All right. Just clarifying that point. All right. Thank you, Ms. Hellens. We will have the applicant now has up to 30 minutes total as the applicant for their presentation. Does not include, I do also have 2 sign-up sheets for individuals who wish to give public comment. Those are 3 minutes. But overall, the applicant has a total of 30 minutes to present this application. So come on up and introduce yourself, and we will start that 30-minute clock.
Okay. Thanks. Nathan Weiss, 601 R&R Heights, Roslyn, Washington. Little history, the staff report explains pretty well everything what we're looking for. Inland Cellular, this is our coverage map of Inland Cellular. Weiss Towers builds towers for Inland Cellular and other carriers. Inland Cellular is an anchor tenant, so they requested Weiss Towers, which is my company, to build a tower here because there's limited coverage there from any carrier. So that's kind of what Inland Cellular's been around since 1989, providing coverage to rural America. And really, we look for areas that are underserved and target those areas. This area has been underserved. We started this process about 4 years ago. We leased the property. It's a large parcel. There's we've looked at the whole parcel to try to cover as much of I-90 for ourselves and other carriers, and this was the best location. With Kootenai County, you can't have towers half a mile away per se to try to accommodate everything along that area, so this is the most suitable location throughout that whole corridor for actually all carriers. A little more about Inland Cellular. Inland Cellular has roaming agreements with AT&T, T-Mobile, and Verizon. Any carrier can go on this tower. It's built for 3 or at least, depending on what goes on the tower. It can handle more if people put less equipment on there. Verizon is here, and they have intents to go on this location currently. So, but like I said, we started this before they were interested. We looked at this site, 190 feet for a tower initially, so that's when we ran the FAA for collision, and it passed at that height. So we do not plan, and we have no intentions. The tower we're building is 150 feet. We have no intentions of putting lights on the tower, so that should be not of any nuisance on that. We've constructed over 200, myself and companies I've been affiliated with have constructed over 200 sites throughout eastern Washington, Idaho, and we follow all jurisdictions, meet all the codes, and we've done all the cultural resources on this, reached out to everywhere, so pretty accustomed to the process, and look for approval. And happy to answer any questions. We don't know any of the concerns other than what was already commented on. So Ann Watanabe's on, and she with Inland Weiss Towers, and she can speak as an applicant also if she has anything else to add and answer any questions you have.
Okay, I have no questions for you at this moment, so thank you. Is there any other, I guess you said, is that person on Zoom?
Yes, sir, she is.
Okay, and that can be part of the applicant time?
Yeah, and why there's no pictures from the road, you can't see the site at all from the backside from that road.
The balloon wasn't cited? Okay. Thank you for reminding me of that question.
Ms. Watanabe, if you have anything to add, please address the hearing examiner and go right ahead.
Thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Ann Watanabe. I am general counsel for the applicant. Address is 109 South 1st Street, Roslyn, Washington, 98941. I don't have anything to add. I think Amy did a good job with her staff report, and I'm here to answer some questions. And we also have Verizon, who is in the room, on behalf of the applicant, using part of our time to address any questions and also explain some of their work product that they have done for the RF coverage. So I will thank you, and I will turn it over to the other, to Joe, Mr. Pelliconi, who's on the phone as well, at the request of the hearing examiner. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If you are going to speak, just introduce yourself as Ms. Watanabe just did. So there's someone else she was passing the mic to, so to speak.
Joe Pelliconi is on Zoom. I've asked him to unmute. Here he goes.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Great. My name is Joe Pelliconi. I'm an RF engineer with Verizon Wireless. Our address is 5430 Northeast 122nd East Avenue in Portland, Oregon. I don't have a substantial amount to add. If you have a question, I'm happy to try to answer. We can talk about the maps if you want. But yeah, that's who I am, and here we are.
So just to, I guess, simplify the point from those maps, basically your analysis and the applicant's position is that there's, I guess, including myself anecdotally driving through the area, is that there's limited to no cell coverage along I-90 in this area.
And it wasn't presented. It wasn't presented, but we do have another document. I'm not sure if Anna has it or if someone else for us in the crowd has it. We did some drive testing where it's a Verizon handset on Verizon test gear, and we drive through that area that demonstrates there is no Verizon service, right? We're not looking at other carriers. We're specifically looking at Verizon. To the map specifically, what I'm trying to demonstrate there is the American Tower location. Yes, there is a tower there. It is in such a place geographically that we can't really serve the intended target of I-90 from that. We like to co-locate when we can. It's cheaper for everybody, right? But if we really want to serve I-90 and actually have usable service, this Weiss Tower location is where that is.
Okay, so additionally, is it expected that, I mean, this will greatly improve coverage, not just in that I-90 corridor, but also the surrounding residential area?
My anticipation, now I'm going to be honest and say I was not looking at the residential areas, but the way these antennas work is, they have a beam width. And yes, we're trying to point down I-90 each direction, but even being directly behind an antenna where where the majority of the energy is not pointed towards you, you still have service. I would anticipate that immediately around the hills where these houses are on the sides of the hills there, I would absolutely anticipate there to be substantial improvement of service, yes.
But the primary...
But I have not...
Go ahead, sir.
Go ahead, sorry.
Sorry, fun.
I was just going to say that the intended target was not to think about the residences. Like, we know there's residences there, right? I can see it on an aerial map, but the objective is absolutely the highway.
Okay, thank you. That was what I was going to ask as my follow-up question, so thank you for preemptively answering it. Those are the only questions I have for you. I believe we have you're from Verizon as well. All right, so thank you, Mr. Pelliconi.
Pelliconi, thank you for your time. Yep.
Thank you. And sir, you may go ahead.
Yeah, hi, my name is Paul Slotemaker, also representing Verizon Wireless in this application. I filled out one of those purple forms that has my
I
address
see
on
here.
there. So I just wanted to kind of piggyback on Joe's comments here. He's the radio frequency engineer. He knows all the technical sort of stuff. I'm here to help answer questions regarding those maps as well, and then he can step in for the specifics. He mentioned some additional data, and so I printed it up and I have it here, and this I think will be helpful. This is the drive test data, this is like the real-time data of Verizon's coverage along Interstate 90, and it also shows that coverage gap, and I can hand this to you. I can also email it when I get back to the office.
Yeah, please, Ms. Connor, and it'll become part of our record.
We'll enter it in as HE 2002.
So that's what Joe was referencing, that additional data there. So, and that just helps to, there's like a cell mapper information that was provided that's kind of crowdsourced cellular coverage data, and it shows a coverage gap. And so this helps bolster that, because Verizon's actual data, when they actually tested their existing signal, it also shows that coverage gap, which is why the site is needed to help fill that coverage gap, provide service along Interstate 90. So, and of
Okay.
course, I'll be available if anything else.
Yeah, and I suppose I might need to have Mr. Weiss come back up, but I can ask you as well. So just real quick, and I did review the file, and maybe for the benefit of some of the members of the public here, there is an existing alternative tower, you guys call American Tower, or it's referred to as American Tower, and it's located many miles to the southeast. And you determined that, I mean, if it could happen right now, I'm sure you guys could put up equipment there and service this area if it were possible. Is that
Yes,
correct?
that would be, yeah, that's accurate. So if Verizon could provide the service from there, I would expect they would go there. I've worked for Tilson, a consultant for Verizon, but if Verizon could provide the service from that tower, that would definitely be the path of least resistance to filling this gap in service, and they wouldn't have to be jumping through these hoops of putting in a new tower. Now Verizon isn't putting in the new tower. We're a tenant on the tower. Inland Cellular is going to have their antennas, and Nathan can speak for them. Verizon will have a separate set of antennas for their network on this tower. But yeah, unfortunately, that tower to the south just doesn't provide the service. And Verizon did provide, the first map that Amy had shown. It kind of paints the hillsides with a low level of service, but the real coverage area on the highway is just not getting the high level of service that's needed to service the highway.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Weiss, will you please come back up? I would like to, actually, I'll wait till you come up here. Just like you to provide some testimony about consideration of alternative sites.
Yeah. So technology's changed. AT&T's on that southern tower. Verizon's on a tower to the west that's a tree tower that's over Lake Coeur d'Alene. Verizon used to shoot almost to Red Wolf Lodge. It doesn't, as you'll see, the coverage is diminished from what it used to be. It used to be CDMA technology. Now it went to LTE. Now it's VoLTE. And then 5G's coming. This might be, Inland Cellular's not putting 5G on this tower. Verizon, I'm not sure what they'll put on there. So coverage has diminished in the area over the last few years. All the carriers have shut down their CDMA network. Inland Cellular does not plan on putting CDMA up here, only VoLTE. So that's why this location. AT&T probably, they used to have better coverage. Now that data that I provided in our packet, it does have AT&T, T-Mobile, and Verizon, and as a drive test. It was taken last the spring, early spring, late, maybe in the winter. And so that was that data from that. So that tower has AT&T on it. It doesn't cover that area either. So that's why this is needed.
All right, and just real quick about considering alternative sites or different parcels, maybe general about the process of doing that.
Yeah, so I looked at this area 4 years ago, large parcel, private owner. There's really, and looked at RF, we're a carrier, we were able to look at that whole range and found out this is really the only suitable place. We do have a map also, of which I'll email, that shows where all the residents are. And so they're here to oppose. I know they're further away from the tower than I-90 is. So we do have the locations. We did their address, which I mapped out to find out where they at. There is one resident to the east of there that probably will see some of the tower. They won't see the whole thing because the trees continue to grow, the foliage. I can't see it from ground level, their residents, but that's the only one that it will visually could see. As you drive in the private road into there, they have an easement over that road also. They will see the tower because was illustrated in the packet.
Right, that picture was from the fork
Correct.
driveway to the cell site?
Yeah.
Okay.
T-Mobile was very interested in the site also. They've laid off and have quit co-locating on quite a few sites in our region that we provide service in. So they probably will come back in the future, but currently not.
Okay, that's all the questions I have for right now. Of course, I reserve the right to ask you some more later if needed, but unless there's any other applicant representatives here, I will move us to the public comment portion of tonight's hearing. Okay. All right, so I do have a couple people who are in favor and one who may wish to speak in favor of the application. David Spiker, do you wish to provide comment, sir?
Sure.
Just coming up and state your name and address, and you will have 3 minutes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Dave Spiker, 2864 South Evergreen Lane, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. The cell tower location is on my property, so I own the 78 acres. And looking at the pictures that were displayed, the only thing I can say is that you're not going to see this tower anywhere from Alder Creek Road. The only place I can see where anybody would see it from a road is coming from 4th of July Pass westbound, and it will just literally just be barely above the tree line. So, I mean, there's a slight ridge. That's why this site was picked just to the east of the tower, and it needed to go to this specific height just to kind of clear over the top of it so that 4th of July Pass could be picked up. And the whole idea for this was the I-90 section of 4th of July Pass is one of the most dangerous sections in I-90 in the entire country. So, you know, we're at an age this should have been done decades ago because there's lots of accidents on 4th of July Pass. And I think out of everybody that's here, there's one person that will probably see the tower from their house, and that would be my neighbor to the east. No one else will see it. That's all I've got.
Thank you, sir. All right, and I do have, just to make sure it's correctly filled out, Jill Spiker does not wish to speak. Is that correct? Okay. Okay. I will move us to those who have signed up to speak in opposition to this application. And we're going to start with just what I have first in front of me. We're going to do the group representative testimony first. Based on our rules of procedure here, when you do sign up with 10 people, and a group representative can have up to 15 minutes to present. I am supposed to make sure that all 10 of these people are here, physically or on Zoom, although I have a little bit of discretion because I would rather have a group representative with 15 minutes rather than 10 individual persons. So hopefully everybody's here. So real quick, I have Carrie Mathis. Okay, as the group representative for, and apologize ahead of time for pronunciation, Neil Traub, okay. Traub, okay. Christian Traub, Ali Mathis, all right. Barbara Mathis, okay. Sam Mathis, Nick Phillips, Carrie Mathis, Jessica Ost, Jude Ost, and Joyce Schnapp. All right, you're all here, so that's great. Carrie Mathis, please come on up and introduce yourself, and we will get a 15-minute clock going for you.
I can do that at the end. Yeah, it's not, we will show, I'd have a few slides, but we'll do it at the end because it's not, I'm not going to be reading off that for the presentation, so.
Okay, I have it right here.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Hearing Examiner. My name is Carrie Mathis. My address is 17028 East Alder Creek Road. And when Mr. Spiker spoke of the people that would see it, that's us. We are the parcel directly adjacent to the east of Mr. Spiker's parcel and the proposed cell tower site. I just want to say that this is sort of an emotional situation because it's something that we really don't want to happen for many reasons, which I'm sure a lot of people here will go into. But I'm going to try and stick to facts and not play on emotions or anything. And so I'll do my presentation. And I would like to thank everyone who donated their time for me. I do appreciate that. I'm going to stick to my notes because I don't want to forget anything because this is important to me. Ladies and gentlemen, and hearing examiners and staff, today I want to address a series of concerns that have been raised regarding the placement of the cell tower off Alder Creek Road. These concerns touch upon a range of topics, including lightning data, fire safety, and the impact on environment. Firstly, there are doubts about the accuracy of the lightning data that has been provided by the cell tower companies in general. A study from the University of Oklahoma has revealed a strong correlation between cell towers and lightning strikes. I'll put a side note here. Any study that I do quote in this presentation will be provided to you, and I have already given them a copy of that, so that'll be entered into evidence. Shockingly, 99.8% of areas with over 100 lightning strikes annually were within 0.6 miles of these towers. This indicates a significant influence of cell towers on lightning strikes, which poses a potential risk to our community. Furthermore, it is essential to note that 71% of acreage burned in the western United States is caused by lightning strikes, debunking the misconception that most forest fires are human-induced. This emphasizes the importance of considering the risk associated with these towers. Moreover, insurance risk data paints a concerning picture from our state. Idaho ranks as the second riskiest state for wildfire damage, with Kootenai County topping the list within Idaho. This data underscores the need for cautious decision-making. One particularly alarming issue is the plan to install lightning attractors in a densely forested area designated as rural residential in our Wolf Lodge community. This may pose a significant threat, especially in case of fire emergencies. My family, being the property directly adjacent, has only one escape route, which could be easily blocked by fire, and is the dirt driveway, gravel driveway that was pictured in the presentation. The steep terrain, the dirt, the potential of fire and gravel roads raises serious concerns. Even in a conservative scenario, with fires moving at 10 miles per hour, some residents would have only 2 to 5 minutes to evacuate. This situation places lives in jeopardy, and we cannot afford to overlook that. Additionally, it's crucial to understand that cell towers can catch fire for various reasons, not just lightning strikes. Construction procedures, which include welding, maintenance procedures, catastrophic component failures, and even nesting birds are all potential causes. This not only poses a danger to the towers themselves, but also to the surrounding environment, as embers from a burning tower can set nearby forests ablaze. Finally, we must consider the biological impact on trees in our vicinity. Dr. Volker Short's research from 2011 highlights that cell towers can actually weaken trees due to the chronic high-frequency exposure, making them even more susceptible to fire and disease. This adds another layer of concern for our community's safety. Furthermore, the International Association of Firefighters has officially opposed placing cell towers on their own fire stations, and they argue that electrical fire safety experts were not consulted in the decision-making process, which was dominated by telecom executives and attorneys. Cell towers are electrical devices, and they could fail at any point. Professional engineers must ensure that these failures happen as safely as possible to prevent fires. However, if a cell tower does catch fire, it's an electrical fire that can't be extinguished conventionally. Firefighters can only apply water to the surrounding areas, but not directly spray the tower due to the risk of electrocution. In such cases, the fire department will call the utility company to cut the power off, thus adding additional time to fire mitigation efforts. I would like to add at this point, too, that it is very hard to access both our property and the other property at many times of the year. It's a very rough road. Alder Creek is gravel and Wolf Lodge is paved, but the access road that we have an easement, our driveway, is 3/4 of a mile long, and it is something that we personally maintain year-round. So we're responsible for plowing it so that we can get in and out. And there are many times when we have to park down at the end of our driveway and take the quads up or shuttle up in different vehicles that we know can make it up the ice. So the accessibility is a bit of an issue. I am for personal property rights. However, the applicant knew when the property was purchased what the property designation was: rural residential or rural recreational. Now, in order to make money, they're changing the designation. The CUP demands that the applicant prove excessive need and excessive benefit in order for the board to approve the CUP. I do not believe that the applicant has met the requirements of Article 8.2, Section C1, Conditions D and E. They have not adequately addressed site hazards or mitigated negative environmental, social, or economic impacts. Services, specifically accessibility and timely fire response, are not available and are not adequate. In conclusion, these concerns are not to be taken lightly. We must prioritize the safety and the well-being of our community when making decisions about the placements of cell towers. The potential risks associated with these towers, from fire hazards to environmental impacts, are too significant to ignore. And it is our responsibility and the committee's responsibility to thoroughly assess these concerns and to make informed decisions that prioritize our community's safety and our health. And if you want to run those slides quickly, please. It's very short, but it's easy to talk about cell phone towers and fires and then have people say that, excuse me, that they don't happen or that they're very rare. But basically just a simple Google search turned up many, one as recent as just the end of September of this year. So these are just a few of the pictures of the cell phone towers caused by different things. Some by electrical or mechanical issues, some by actual repairs or structure due to the welding. You can hit the next slide. And there, you notice it's across the country and in all different types of situations too, whether it's forested or residential. And the one I did want to highlight, the last one is the one that just happened September 28th, but also the osprey nest, they honestly didn't have a picture of the actual fire. But that was a concern to me because we do have quite a bit of wildlife, including hawks, eagles, owls, all of that. And there are nests everywhere in the trees, so I don't know how they wouldn't want to try to build a nest in the towers too. I don't know what their mitigation is or if they have one for that. But in this case, in Washington, that's what actually caused the fire in the cell phone tower, was an osprey nest. So once again, thanks to everyone who donated their time to me. Thank you for your consideration, and we appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Those exhibits will be entered as HE 2003.
Okay. I will have those exhibits to review. Thank you. All right, I have our next group representative. You don't need to hear the spiel again. The group representative is Danielle Gregorio, who's here. Great. So then I have Dominic Gregorio, Ember Gregorio. Okay, all right. And Brishan Gregorio. Okay, right there. Okay, great. Nick Beckett, Mimi Murphy. Okay, Tom Pace, Judith Barton. Okay, Jacob El Sharad, I can't read. Ellsberg. Oh, okay. I did not read that correctly. And Leonard Ellsberg. Jacob and Leonard Ellsberg. Okay, I see that. Okay, all right, great. Thanks. Again, apologies for the pronunciation. All right, so we have everyone here. We have Danielle Gregorio. Please state your name and address, and we'll get a 15-minute clock started for you.
My name is Danielle Gregorio. I live at 14665 East Antelope Court, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, 83814. I'm also, like Carrie, going to go from my notes so I don't forget anything. I moved to this property mainly because it was more than 3 miles to the nearest cell tower. I have been aware of the many problems associated with cell towers for years and wanted to be as far away from them as possible. The former house I lived in was quite close to several cell towers, and I had many heart palpitations, headaches, problems sleeping. So that was an issue. Currently, I can see no man-made structures of any kind from my deck, and this tower might change that. They mentioned they had a balloon up. Unfortunately, they didn't let anybody else in the neighborhood know so that we could take a look at the time. So I can see off in that direction, and I can see where the highway snakes through the hills, so I'm pretty sure I would be able to see it pop up there. Tonight I will show you peer-reviewed and published science from many reputable sources that the radio frequency radiation that is emitted from cell towers causes many serious health effects. Any new tower that is approved for construction in Kootenai County will affect the lives of the families living miles around, as well as wildlife. So I urge you to use the precautionary principle when making your decision tonight. Most people don't realize that the 1996 FCC standard for safe levels of emission was actually based on a level set by the American National Standards Institute in 1982. So I don't know how many people here had cell phones in 1982, had even heard of cell phones in 1982, but not many. So while this standard has not been changed in almost 30 years, counting from 1996, it has usurped all local authority. We're not allowed to deny wireless facilities based on health concerns alone because the FCC has deemed them safe. Did you know that the FCC is not a public health agency? So why are they telling us what is safe? Today, now into our 5th generation of mobile content and data delivery, with phones and pads instantly accessing the latest news, self-driving vehicles lining the roads, and smart appliances infiltrating our consumer lives, the FCC has maintained its regulations based on scientific data and health standards from 1996. In 1996, there were 30,000 cell towers. Today, there are about 418,000 cell towers. And in the next 6 years, the Wireless Infrastructure Association, through their member companies, are planning to install another 800,000 cell towers. Hundreds of scientists have evaluated the cell tower RF radiation exposure limits of the U.S. Federal Communications Commission, FCC, and the International Commission for Non-Ionizing Radiation Protection, ICN-IRP, and found the limits are decades outdated and not protective to the health of the public, especially not the health of children. The science confirms harmful biological effects at levels that FCC and ICNIRP limits would consider safe. In fact, the majority of studies show genetic and neurological effects. So I will highlight several here that can be found on ehtrust.org, sciencedirect.com, and PubMed. I also have a PDF of my findings with direct links to each of these papers for your review on a data key that I provided. So I'm just going to highlight a few. There's so many, but I tried to pick out ones that were kind of comprehensive. So Levitt in 2010 published in Environmental Reviews. He analyzed 100 studies and found 80% showed biological effects near towers. In 2011, wireless radio frequency radiation was classified as a Class 2B possible carcinogen by the World Health Organization's International Agency for Research on Cancer. Between then and now, the published peer-reviewed scientific evidence has significantly increased. Falcone, 2018, published in Environmental Research, exposed rats to RF comparable to cell tower RF levels and found increased cancers. Now, many scientists are of the opinion that the weight of current peer-reviewed evidence supports the conclusion that radiofrequency radiation should be regarded as a human carcinogen. Dode in 2011 published in Science of the Total Environment a 10-year study on cell phone antennas by the local municipal health department, and several universities in Brazil found a clearly elevated relative risk of cancer mortality at residential distances of 500 meters or less from cell phone towers. Mayo 2015 published in Environmental Research and Public Health found higher exposures linked to higher risk of type 2 diabetes. Rodriguez 2021 published in the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health found higher exposure to cell arrays linked to higher mortality from all cancer, and specifically lung and breast cancer. A review entitled Evidence for a Health Risk by RF on Humans Living Around Mobile Phone Base Stations from Radio Frequency Sickness to Cancer reviewed the existing scientific literature and found radio frequency sickness, cancer, and changes in biochemical parameters. That was Belmori, 2022. Cell towers have 2G, 3G, and 4G antennas. 5G antennas are being added to the base stations worldwide. After a cell tower is erected, new antennas can be easily added and generally without any or minimal public participation in the decision-making process. Cell tower radiation is classified as high risk by insurance companies, according to Lloyd's of London white paper. Insurance companies do not insure for long-term damages from the electromagnetic radiation emitted by these towers. 5G, cell tower radiation, and electromagnetic fields are all repeatedly classified as high risk and compared to asbestos in insurance white papers. Wireless companies warn their shareholders of potential future risks related to radio frequency radiation exposure, but they do not warn the people exposed to emissions from their cell antenna infrastructure. Corporate investor warnings by companies such as AT&T, Verizon, Vodafone, and Crown Castle are contained in their annual reports filed on Form 10-K, and they inform shareholders that companies may incur significant financial losses related to electromagnetic fields. As Carrie mentioned, cell towers can catch fire. They also contain hazardous materials. They create serious safety issues due to equipment and inadequate worker safety procedures in place. Cell tower compounds contain hazardous equipment such as diesel fuel and lead acid batteries. There have been accidents where these tanks leak, polluting the area. So I'm curious if a professional engineer will evaluate and certify this project's safety before they go live. I'm also wondering who carries the liability for damages. If something were to happen, is it the landowner? Is it the telecom corporation? Or is it the municipality that ends up being liable? Carrie had some great pictures up there. I also have a PDF where I took tons of pictures, tons of links to news stories. So there's that. And I also want to mention the Washington State Tower that caught fire because the ospreys were building nests in it. They were thought the birds likely damaged the beacon or its 110-volt power wire while building their nests. The reason why I wanted to go over this again is because there are many studies that actually show the harmful effects on migratory birds. In October of 2005, W. Evans reported hundreds of migratory birds documented killed by collisions with cell towers in the Northeast, sometimes in significant numbers of hundreds of birds per cell tower per night. Not until recently have the effects of low-level, non-thermal electromagnetic radiation on domestic and wild birds been made public. For example, laboratory studies by T. Litovitz and D. Carlo in 2000 and 2002 used the standard 915 megahertz cell phone frequency on domestic chicken embryos and showed that radiation from extremely low levels, 0.0001 of the level emitted by an average digital cell phone, caused heart attacks and deaths in some embryos, where the control group was unaffected. In Europe, the effects of microwave and other radiation from communication towers impacts have been well documented. Balmori, 2005, in Spain, found strong negative correlations between levels of tower-emitted microwave radiation and bird breeding, nesting, and roosting in the vicinity of electromagnetic fields. He documented nest and site abandonment, plumage deterioration, locomotion problems, and death. While the species he studied had historically been documented to roost and nest in these areas, Balmori did not observe these symptoms prior to the construction of the cellular phone towers. Several other studies correlated his results. So I mention this because there's actually been a lawsuit from the American Bird Conservancy et al. Versus the FCC, which the commission lost on appeal because the effects of communication towers to migratory birds must now be included as part of the court order review process, and the public must be provided a meaningful opportunity to request an environmental assessment under National Environment Policy Act, NEPA, for proposed towers that FCC considers categorically excluded. So I'm pretty sure that the applicant did not provide an EA. I had very little time or warning about the cell tower, so I could not apply to request the EA. These also include considerations under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act for impacts to protected migratory birds above and beyond issues pertaining to the Endangered Species Act, as well as compliance under the NEPA and its regulations. NEPA review includes opportunities for public review, comment, request for preparation of an environmental assessment, and even litigation. Additionally, the rules and regulations implemented by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service under the MBTA and the Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act, both of which are strict liability criminal statutes. Carrie touched on the firefighters resolution. So in the International Association of Firefighters passed a resolution opposing cell towers on its stations in 2004 and are now exempt from the law after a study found neurological damage in firefighters with antennas on their fire stations. This was a study conducted by Gunnar Husser, MD, PhD, of 6 firefighters in the Santa Barbara area who had been exposed to a 2G cell tower in front of their station for 5 years. All 6 men were found to have brain abnormalities on SPECT brain scans. Beginning the day the tower was activated, firefighters began experiencing the following symptoms: headaches, including migraines, tinnitus, lethargy, cognitive impairment, sleep disturbances, waking up as if they had been anesthetized, anxiety, depression, infertility, and immunosuppression. All of these men were healthy prior to the activation of the tower. They had all been told by the wireless carrier that there were no ill effects from the technology. When the firefighters complained to the carrier that they were ill and unable to function in their jobs at maximum capacity, they were told the tower was well within the FCC guidelines. The tower was measured at 1/1000th of what the FCC allows, 1/1000th. Rather than reassurance, this is deeply concerning because what it tells us is that the men who passed rigorous cognitive and physical exams before entering the fire service became ill when a tower was placed in front of their station at a fraction of what the government allows. When the strongest of the strong among us become ill at a fraction of what the government permits, what about children? What about pregnant women? What about women in general, because our body masses are smaller than men? What about the elderly, the infirm, those fighting cancer? It goes on and on. But Danielle, you may say, we can't deny a tower because of health effects. It is true that city and state governments have been constrained in some ways by Section 704 of the Telecommunications Act of 1996. Although Section 704 states that new tower construction requires approval of the state or local governing authority, it clarifies that local zoning authority may be preempted by the FCC. Maybe, not all the time. However, new developments may arguably have changed this situation. I will only highlight two for time constraints, but there are two municipal case law examples that have resulted in towns being able to supersede Section 704 provisions and deny cell tower permit approval. It was in Sprint Spectrum versus Willoth in 1999 and Verizon Wireless versus Clarkstown, New York in 2000. So with all of this verifiable information, because I've given you all the links to check for yourselves, you can no longer claim that you have not been given credible studies that show RFR causes human and animal harm or that they don't exist. They do. Also, I've given you food for thought on the issue of whether or not the towers violate the many migratory and bird preservation acts. These towers can cause fires and reduce real estate values of nearby homes. Are all of these things dismissible so several telecom companies can add to their profits at the expense of the Wolf Lodge residents? Are these companies' profits more important than us, our forests, and our wildlife? I'll close with those questions. Thank you for your time, and I know you'll do the right thing to protect us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Her flash drive will be entered as HE 2004.
Thank you. All right, and I've got another stack. And if you said does not wish to speak, I'm still going to ask if you've changed your mind since you're here. So just from the top of my stack, I have Patricia Terrell saying does not wish to speak. Is that still true? Okay, thank you. I've got Joe, looks like Whipple, and wishes to speak. So you're up on the list, so come on up, sir. Introduce yourself, and you will have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. My name is Joe Whipple. I live at 16781 Alder Creek Road, Coeur d'Alene. These opinions are offered with respect to all. The CUP proposal offers to, quote, fill the gap of communication along Interstate 90, end quote. According to the website b3n.org, maps of wireless coverage in North Idaho for 3 major wireless telecommunication companies show clear coverage along I-90 in that portion of the corridor. So is there a need to install an additional tower in the area? Is there a significant gap in coverage? There are several other questions that come to mind. Has anyone come forward to complain of a lack of service? And if so, where is this group of people? In any of their mapping data, is there data to support it, or is it just computer generated? Did the applicants provide live data of the affected areas that are considered a gap in communication? Did the applicant sufficiently provide probative evidence that a significant gap of coverage currently exists to a specified constituency in the targeted area of the proposed tower? Ninth Circuit Court rulings definitions of significant gap in telecommunications coverage and least intrusive means to close any significant gap. And I'm going to defer to a previous hearing earlier this year for information on these federal cases. I'll supply that on the paperwork. Okay, any significant gap does not include in building coverage or in vehicle coverage as part of the definition of a significant gap of coverage. It only applies to personal wireless service, that's wireless telecommunication services to outdoor wireless phone calls as covered by the Ninth Circuit Court case law. Telecommunication companies frequently cite that wireless communication is not guaranteed and is subject to change without notice. Extending definitions of significant gap or wireless coverage should be resisted here and elsewhere. Additionally, on August 29th, a request for agency review and comment, KCSO was not sent a request for a comment, yet Panhandle Health was asked for comment, among others. The staff report also reflects the same under findings of fact, section 1.21, exhibit key, public agency. In order for KCSO, Sheriff's Office, to adequately respond to requests, they would have to have needed to study the matter. If community development eventually did contact KCSO, was it done past the 30-day mark listed on the letter? The citizens need to have confidence in the draft findings and conclusion of law of the staff report, specifically 7.01, as was the case once before in the same vicinity for CUP 22-008 a year ago. Finally, our neighborhood has concerns about the need for this type of conditional use permit. Am I over?
You can finish your thought, but
Okay.
please be respectful of everyone's time.
Thank you, sir. Conditional use permit in turning our area into yet another attempt of revising the rural area to commercial use, primarily serving the request of the applicants and the lessor. This proposal should be reconsidered until such time as concerns have been adequately addressed, or better yet, denied altogether. Thank you, and respectfully submitted.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
That'll be entered as HE 2005.
All right, I think I've got some of the people. Oh, no. Okay, Mark Mathis. All right. I did recognize the last name, but you were not on that list. All right, sir.
Mathis, probably. Okay, thanks for letting me come up here, Mr. Hearing Examiner. Mark Mathis, 17028 East Alder Creek. I'm the property directly to the east, okay? And I'm the person that the cell tower will probably affect the most, and it will impact my view, and we'll get into that. 4 years ago, Weiss Communications approached me because I actually have a better cell tower site. I'm further up the mountain to the east, closer to 4th of July Pass, and I said no to that for all the reasons discussed. What I want to get into real quick is nothing is said about the benefit to the neighborhood. It's all towards I-90. And the staff recommended approval. Well, I go to the Kootenai County Land Use and Development Code in 8.8.201, required finding. The hearing body shall not recommend for approval, and the board shall not approve a CUP unless the proposal adequately mitigates any negative environmental, social, and economic impacts. So I'm asking community development, or I'm asking that you ask them, tell me about their study on real estate values, because they're supposed to prove that it adequately mitigates economic impact. Because if you do a Google search after this, do cell towers impact real estate values? I think you're going to be surprised at what you see. I have something right here. Survey done by the National Institute for Science, Law, and Public Policy indicates cell towers and antennas negatively impact interest in real estate properties. 1,000 people surveyed. 94% reported that cell towers and antennas would impact their interest and the price they're willing to pay for it. 79% said under no circumstance would they ever purchase or rent a property near a cell tower. 90% said they were concerned about the increasing number of cell towers. A different survey, and you'll have copies of all these, said that buyers would pay as much as 20% less for a property. The Environmental Health Trust survey, this one says 10% for homes within, 10% decrease in the value of homes within tower visibility range. And you need to understand, the applicants said, I would see the tower. Right now, when I look off to the west, I see mountains, gorgeous sunsets. I can just kind of see the top of Lake Coeur d'Alene. And you put a cell tower in that view, you'll see that will significantly impact my property's value. because nobody moves out to the country to look at a cell tower in their view. And if that's going to impact my property, Kootenai County Land Development Code says you cannot approve this if it's going to negatively impact me. Well, if you take my property that's worth $1 million and take off 10 to 20%, you just took $100,000 to $200,000 out of my pocket. So, I will end with, I have tons of surveys for you, but your own code says you cannot approve this if it's going to have a negative economic impact, and I think I can prove to you that it will. So, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, sir. If you bring those up, we'll get those entered into the record.
That'll be HE 2006.
Okay, next up I have Cassandra Ryder.
Hello, Cassandra Ryder. I live at 6219 South Wolf Lodge Creek Road, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I oppose this CUP because this does not serve or harmonize with the community as required by the comprehensive plan. It states the commercial development in rural communities should serve local residents and harmonize with these communities. I live approximately 3 miles from the proposed location, and it is unlikely that I will benefit from this tower due to the relatively low elevation of the tower amongst the rugged terrain. Most residents of Wolf Lodge will not benefit from this tower due to that same issue. And most residents of Wolf Lodge do not use that section of I-90. Most residents will go to exit 22, which is west of that section. I'm confused by some of the comments made by the applicant, saying that this tower could serve large apartment complexes. We have no large apartment complexes. It said that it could serve new residential community. We are not a new residential community, and it says it could provide service along a newly built highway. This section of road was established in 1861 by Captain John Mullen. This is not new highway. I question the amount of research done on this location and this neighborhood. Here I have a zoom in of the map provided by the applicant. I did a Google map of it, and it indicates that's about 4 miles of service that this tower is intended to serve. This map is an overlay of the intended service area, and this is the intended service area of the the existing service area of the AMT tower. You can see that clearly the AMT serves significantly more area than the proposed tower would, and that is due to the low elevation of this tower. A taller elevation serves a much wider community. Even though there are no residents or established roads on those hillsides, there are lots of people hunting, fishing, recreating. So it does serve residents of Kootenai County, whereas this small section is primarily to serve I-90. The applicant provided a map from Cell Mapper. I question the accuracy of the Cell Mapper website. It is only accessed through Google Play Store. It is not accessible on iPhones, and it only has about 500,000 downloads. So it's worldwide. So it's not a very well-used app, and so I question the amount of information that was actually uploaded to make those maps and how accurate that information is. The Federal Communications Commission maps show that both T-Mobile and Verizon fully cover this area. So I just question the necessity of this map, especially of this tower, especially that it won't serve the residents of Wolf Lodge. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
HE 2007.
All right, next I have Brian Terrell.
Hello, my name is Brian Terrell. I live at 12723 East Alder Creek Road. Like many of the people in the Wolf Lodge area. I won't benefit from this particular service. I sit below the mountainous terrain, so this won't benefit me. But we're here because as a community, we support one another, and especially when one person in our community may have a detrimental effect to their property value, which is something that this body needs to look at with regard to a conditional use permit. I think Mark actually stated specifically with regard to the 7 required conditions for a conditional use permit, if any one of them is not approved, then the conditional use permit isn't approved. I think it's safe to say, especially when you look at the property specifically with Mr. Spiker, that cell tower is very close to proximity to Mark and Carrie Mathis. That would potentially affect their property value. I think that's something that needs to be looked at a little more carefully. I'm not really convinced about the AMT tower. The information we've received so far is from Inland Solar or Weiss. I'm not against property rights either. I think Mr. Spiker has every right to use his property and take advantage, just like any other Idahoan, until it affects another party. When I look at the cell tower at AMT, cell tower near 4th of July Pass, I have to ask myself, where's the information that comes from, whether that's not sufficient for Verizon? And looking at the information that was supplied, I see that staff asked Verizon if they could provide engineering, and Verizon said exact data about the sites is proprietary and cannot be disclosed due to competitive reasons. So what we use is a crowd sharing cell mapper as the basis for why we need this tower. I mean, when we look at the profit motivator here, obviously Mr. Spiker is not putting a tower in on his property because he just wants to benefit 4 miles of highway. He's doing it because he's going to receive a lease payment. I've conducted these before in a landfill. I've put a cell tower in before. I understand the profit motivator for everybody involved, and everybody enjoys the privilege and use of having cells are ubiquitous. I get it. But Weiss doesn't make any money unless they put a cell tower in. And Inland doesn't make any money until they get their services on a Weiss cell tower. I don't think there's been enough investigative work done on the AMT cell tower to determine if it truly is not sufficient. The fact is, I believe that's an AT&T provider tower, and that may be the direct reason why Verizon doesn't necessarily want to use the AMT tower. They'd like to have their own. Anyway, I appreciate your consideration.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, next up I have Greg Schremp, who may wish to speak. Sure. All right, come on up, sir.
My name is Greg Schremp. I live at 5549 South Wolf Lodge Creek Road, Coeur d'Alene. I'm going to attack this from a different perspective here. When we moved to Wolf Lodge 20 years ago, I noticed that honeybees were conspicuously absent. At the time, I thought I could help the situation by becoming a beekeeper. After 12 years of keeping bees, I've learned they're under tremendous pressure from all sides. You folks probably have heard the same thing. Whether it's varroa mites, pesticides, herbicides, yellow jackets, or bears, they're having a real tough time these days. For me, it's actually been a 12-year learning curve. And now there are numerous studies that implicate cell towers and their electromagnetic radiation disrupting honeybees' navigation skills, which leads to colony collapse disorder. That's probably another term we've heard. Honeybees, they use the Earth's magnetic field for direction, and the radiation from cell towers disrupts their ability to do that. Bees can travel up to 10 miles while foraging for food. So this cell tower will have an effect on the bees, honeybees in the area, including mine. Please don't take this lightly, as 35% of the world's food supply depends on insect pollinators. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. I'm sorry. I've got Bet something Whipple. I'm sorry for not being able to read that. Does not wish to speak? Okay. Apologize again about the pronunciation. All right. I do have Dwayne Gross, and you did mark does not wish to speak. Is that still true? If there is a Dwayne Gross here. Okay. Keep thinking I'm recognizing the name. Nope, not Josh. Okay, Josh Ellsberg. Yes, it was the other Ellsbergs on the list. So Josh Ellsberg, does not wish to speak. Is that still true?
Correct.
Okay. Lisa Ellsberg does not wish to speak. Is that still correct? Okay. Marie? Erica Ellsberg? No? Okay, was that on the list? No, okay, sorry. All right, well, I'm giving you the opportunity to speak. If you're not taking it, then this is your last chance to enter it into the record. So we'll keep going. Lily Ellsberg does not wish to speak. Margaret Ellsberg does not wish to speak. And Bartholomew Ellsberg does not wish to speak. Okay. Mr. Callahan, sir, are there people connected on Zoom who may wish to speak?
Only the applicants are still on Zoom at this point.
Okay, so that means we will have up to 15 minutes if the applicants or any of the representatives would like to provide further comment or follow up to any of the testimony, or I suppose anything else they would like to add to the record. You have up to 15 minutes. Of course, you don't have to use any of it. But if there's anything you would like to add to or address any of the comments and concerns of the public, that would be much appreciated.
Nathan Weiss, answer some questions if you have any. Why this area? Trouble tickets from I-90 from passing vehicles through that corridor. So there's the need and the request for that because it was stated. How do we know? Well, there's evidence from trouble tickets. 9 million vehicles travel through that area a year. So that way. Regarding fire, used to be 31,000 cell towers. Now there's 418,000 cell towers. So yes, there's going to be probably more lightning strikes and things like that just because of the nature of it. I don't have any data on that, why there's more lightning. We've never had a cell tower catch fire. We've have fire departments spray our towers from aircrafts, and they park their emergency vehicles at our cell towers anytime there's fires. We're heavy in Nez Perce, the lower counties from Idaho, Nez Perce, Latah, Benoit. We've got many towers, and we're basically, we partner together. They co-locate on our cell towers for emergency services all the time. We offer that as a service. We don't charge, except for maybe power, if there's that. AC power, there's no light on this tower. So the tower is, we do not have any, Inland Cellular has no, it's all DC. So no AC on the towers planned. Weiss Towers is requesting to build this tower, and why it's listed as communication tower, because it's not just for wireless mobile cellular users. So if internet companies, as technology advances, changes, the lifespan of this tower is, the lease is 45 years and renewable. So it can be there. Who knows where the technology is going? Satellite is not the fix-all solution. That's why they continue and they say the numbers are going to go up, because satellite is not the solution. We do have a leased area of 100 by 100. We generally do not utilize that whole area for fencing and our compounds. But if a requirement is for setback to mitigate for fire purposes, we could gravel and remove all the vegetation within our leased area of 100 by 100, which would, because there's trees and foliage there, we generally would not be doing that. if anything's gonna fall in there, yes, we remove those trees type of thing, but we put weed barrier down, we sterilize the area around the tower for that purpose, to protect from anything from getting in and noxious weeds and fire itself, getting to the tower, not really from the tower out. But it's grounded, it's protected. And I guess if you have any questions, answer those. And if there's questions, you've heard a lot of testimony tonight. If you wish for us to reply we'd ask if you have any questions to have the record open for us to answer your questions. I don't know if that's doable or not, but we're glad to do that. So, and if Ann has more to add, I'll let her, or if you have any questions for me.
Yeah, and excuse me if I think the question out loud as I pose it. Still would like a little more clarification on the AMT tower. That's not one of yours, or is it?
No. American Tower is American Tower, national company, have millions around the world. No, it's not ours. We've looked at it. We have looked at, we looked at that before and go, why is there no service in this area? And that's why we didn't go there. We could have. Verizon has never. T-Mobile hasn't. So only one that has been there was AT&T. Technology's changed. Mountaintops are not the most desirable locations anymore. The coverage now with technology, it used to work fine. It used to be able to blast as far as you possibly can. Now the technology requires, it doesn't work when it blasts. It actually kills the signal. So towers are going from mountaintops down into valleys. You can't go any lower because you get into state land at this, and you can't really get lower because you got to get microwave signals out. So this is the number, very good location. We stayed to talk to the neighbor. He's got a lot of trees. We were going to have to remove quite a few trees. Signals don't go through trees really good, but we all have different frequencies. So we all compete. So sometimes some carriers can be on the same tower, even not at the same elevation, but we all have different frequencies, so we all have different coverage objectives. And so some have to be really close, further apart. But as truth, everything where towers used to be 15 years ago, there needs to be, or service, you'd have 2 towers. Now you have to put something in between, or maybe 2 in between, just to get that same type of coverage. It's about everyone wanting to be on the internet and data speeds. So it's not for, it's for broadband services, which there's been billions of dollars put out for broadband services, and that just doesn't mean for residential homes. It's for mobile and fixed services also. So DOT and trafficking along that corridor. All their vehicles are getting equipment, so they're constantly connected. They're not connected now. Because they're relying on this newer technology that's being deployed throughout the nation. So that site, like I said, AT&T will probably be coming shortly to this location. They do use our network. 911 will work. So same thing with T-Mobile. They can use our network. Verizon has towers to the west. We don't need Inland Cellular doesn't need to connect to the west per se, because we utilize the other 3 national carriers. This corridor, this 4 miles, yes, it's not a big stretch, is dead. So that's the objective, is to have that connectivity for everybody.
Is 4 miles kind of a comparatively small area for what you're typically doing?
Yeah, but the terrain there is the issue because of the curving and everything else. So it is, but not, well, yes and no. The depends how much population, because right now, they put every block. So you have to have every carrier's at a school because of the amount of people that are using cell phones on school property. If you got over 300 people, every carrier needs to have a site there on the school, pretty much around the school premises, within a half a mile, in order to have building penetration and adequate data speeds and services.
Is there any planned mitigation for bird nesting or anything like that? Is that
There
standard?
is, I mean, we, more often it's around ponds and lakes and things like that. We do have one actually in Washington, Badger Lake area, that we have a bird in it, and there's a certain time of year we have to mitigate to go remove it. But we have to work with Fish and Wildlife and everything. There is bird stuff you put up there, flickery stuff. We never had to do it, but this bird just showed up, so we will be exploring that and doing that. So there is mitigation to try to stop birds from nesting, because it adds loading. Every user and every time there's changes on the tower, we do re-engineering. So we can't have a bird nest up there because it adds to the tower.
Okay, I believe that's all the questions I have for you. Do any of the other applicant representatives like to? Okay.
There's a few minutes left on the clock.
Yes. Paul, go ahead. Paul, please go ahead.
Okay.
I would just like a few minutes at the end. Thank you.
Okay, I'll try to make this quick. So, once again, I'm Verizon's representative, so wearing the Verizon hat on this, because Verizon's proposing to co-locate, attach some antennas onto this tower. They're not going to be the owners of this tower. I want to thank all the public who commented, of course. Happy that they were able to kind of voice some of their concerns, and I'd like to kind of address a few of those. Regarding fire, I'm not aware of these being a large source of fire. In fact, good, reliable wireless service helps with emergency service responses. Well, fire as well as many other emergency services. So the better the signal, the more reliable wireless or emergency services response you can get. There's also going to be a large graveled area at the base of this that acts as a fuel break in the very unlikely event of any sort of fire happening at the site. Regarding health effects, I think you're aware of the FCC, the Telecom Act ruling on health effects. However, I will just remind that Verizon does have an FCC license. I'm sure Inland Cellular has one too. That license authorizes Verizon to operate within a certain frequency band at certain levels. Verizon operates at a very low, in the single digits as far as what the FCC allows for power output, very low powered compared to what they're allowed to. Regarding the science, I know somebody had said that the science hasn't been updated since 1996. To my understanding, the FCC is constantly looking at science from all over the world regarding wireless technology and services. They're monitoring this stuff. The latest science is not from 1996. They are looking at the science that comes in both locally, within the United States as well as internationally. And they're continually to factor that in. They are not a health agency, and that was correct, but they do rely on health. They aggregate the data from health agencies, both in the United States and around the world, to make their standards. There was a comment about proving that there is a gap in service and that we're filling that gap in service. Verizon has provided there are coverage maps. I added to that the drive test data today, which is the real-time data. There was a comment that Verizon was reluctant to provide proprietary information. However, they have provided this real-time data, which they don't typically provide, but in this case, just to go the extra mile to prove that there is, in fact, a coverage gap, that data proves that that there is the coverage gap that this site is needed to provide, to fill along the highway. Regarding real estate, I'll just remind and add that more than 50% of homes these days are cellular only. They do not have a landline going to their homes. That speaks to the importance of reliable wireless services to homes these days. And in fact, most homeowners, prospective homeowners, when they're looking to buy a new home, oftentimes the first thing they do is turn on the phone to see if there's any good service at that home. Because if there's not service at the home, that factors in. That's going to be a negative in their that will definitely factor into their decision to purchase the home. Being that most homes are wireless only, it's presumed that that would be a detriment if there's not good, reliable service. So this will provide, fill the gap in service along the interstate, as well as the nearby homes around there will also get the benefit of good, reliable service from this facility. And I think that was it. So I'll leave the rest to Ann. I don't want to take up all the time. So
Thank you. Yes, and I believe that was Ms. Watanabe.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I can answer any questions too, or I'll let Ann speak.
I have no questions for you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Great.
Go ahead, Ms. Watanabe, if you can hear me.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Hearings Examiner. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I think that Nathan and Mrs. Bodemaker answered the public comment questions and concerns very well. I'm just going to say that we do firewizing. There were no agency issues from the fire and rescue department about fire issues. We always do best management practices when we do construction. I will also note that we do NEPA. I believe it was one of the Don perhaps mentioned NEPA. We do NEPA, and those go to federal agencies, and the federal agencies are the ones who will deal with the migratory bird issue, and nobody has commented on this. We did NEPA, and there were no migratory issues identified for birds. Obviously, RF is preempted. On the real estate issue, that is absolutely correct. What Paul said, Wi-Fi is integral for people in rural areas so that they can work remotely in the world that we live in. I would make a plug for public benefit versus the localized concern that we have. As Nathan mentioned, that what we have in the record, there's 9.8 million passengers that travel through the section of I-90 that serve to benefit, plus all the health and safety issues for all those people traveling along that area. In terms of the criticism against the cell mapper, I think it's integral that Verizon is able to support the cell mapper crowdsourced data with their own in-house engineering. So I think that's a great benefit that we have. And I would also, I'm not sure if it's appropriate at this point if we would like to ask for to keep the record open so that we might submit some additional information to the record. Again, some of the things that are brought up are sort of outside the scope here in terms of RF and health. Fire and lightning, that can happen at any source. We got energy power pole infrastructure all across the nation. How to sort of defend that. It's difficult. Like Nathan said, we don't have fire issues. We do firewizing around our towers. So I think that we've heard the public comment well. I think we've addressed it well. I might just ask Nathan, as the owner of the company, if he feels it's appropriate that, or even Verizon, if they feel like they would like to enhance the record and supplement the record to address the public comments here about coverage or anything else that they have heard, if that's appropriate, Mr. Hearings Examiner.
Is there specific evidence you have in mind, or are you opening up this question to the gentleman here? If there is specific evidence you would like to submit to the record, if I do keep the record open? I guess I'd just ask that question to three people. So, Ms. Watanabe, is there specific evidence you would like to submit at a later time?
I don't necessarily think there is. I mean, we do have a NEPA study that addresses the migratory bird issue, which is a federal issue also, and didn't come up in the CEPA process. So I think I'm comfortable there. I just want to make sure that the RF people feel comfortable with what they have provided for coverage. I know Mr. Slomek provided the call drop information, and Nathan provided the overall inland cellular coverage, so you can see what we do, where we serve. I just might ask the technical people if they feel there's something else they might supplement the record with, or if Nathan would like to.
I can only say I have 4 phones, and there's dead spots through that area. Verizon's is large. Inland doesn't exist. Inland wants to be there, and Inland Cellular doesn't really matter what Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile wants. Inland Cellular wants to go there. And Inland Cellular has a right, they have 2 licenses to be there. They have 600 megahertz and 2.5. So they have total rights governed by Washington DC FCC to provide service in this county. And so our case for Inland Cellular, they want to be there. And all we can do is provide data, what is public information. Awesome that Verizon's here and has their live experience drive test today. And the public information. Yes, if you look at Google Maps and look at the carrier, the national, all the carriers, they show a lot of coverage. But there's these, when you get in the crevices, they don't cover that area. So I don't think we have to add anything more to the record regarding RF coverage unless there's questions to it. But
Okay, and then just real quick, the reference to NEPA is the National Environmental Protection Act.
Policy Act.
Policy.
Yeah, Policy Act. Don't usually have to say that one out loud. And so you did perform.
That's been completed.
Okay, and I don't guess I did not
It's
see
in
that
the
as part.
document. It would be.
Okay.
Excuse me, I'm not certain if that was actually submitted into the record. We can certainly supply that, so if you would like to leave the record open, we could submit the NEPA into the record. And I might just add one small comment here with the comment about liability for damages in case there were a fire. We obviously have insurance. In a force majeure event like a fire, a natural wildfire would be something in that category. I just wanted to mention that in terms of people concerned about.
Yeah, the NEPA was for the other government bodies that needed it, not requirement of.
That we do for the FCC, and that goes through a very robust process through tribal review and through all federal agencies and others. So I would be happy to submit that into the record.
Yes, I would like that to be submitted as part of the record. I suppose I'm not going to completely leave the record open. I'm just going to make a request to have that information added to the record. So I'm not going to officially leave the record open, but I would like to request that and make sure that it ends up as a part of our official record. And I would like to take a look at that, and so the members of the public can see that as well.
Mr. Hearing Examiner,
Yes,
this
sir.
is Joe Paliconi with Verizon. I would definitely like to talk about the American Tower location for just a moment, if we have time.
Yes, please.
Okay, so I've looked extensively at that location. The issue is twofold. It's the distance from I-90, right? But it's also the elevation change. So antennas are not pointed flat. You have to point them down toward the ground, right? So when you do that, the terrain chews up the signal. So by the time it gets to I-90, yes, a propagation map may show a very poor signal there, but that's the best case scenario. So in a best case scenario, you have very poor service. That's the problem with the American Tower. To be very frank about it, we would love to be there. It's less expensive. It's faster. We don't have to do this. That would absolutely be our first choice. But it's not a viable location for the intended target. That's the whole issue for Verizon. We won't be able to provide a level of service that people driving in the car, when it snows, it would potentially become very poor service because the RF struggles to get through water. As trees grow, the RF struggles to get through that. So to that point, that distance and that elevation change is a problem. And I wanted to address your question about, is 4 miles a normal size? It's absolutely individual. In this location, 4 miles is great. Now, I have sites that I design out in eastern Oregon that absolutely go in 11 miles. But they're also a 200-foot tower on an absolutely flat plane. Topography is everything. Everybody here is super aware, a very difficult reason. Every bend, RF goes straight. It's straight line of sight. So every bend, every object attenuates that signal. So 4 miles of reasonably good coverage along I-90 is, in my opinion, a really major win. And that's all I wanted to add.
Okay, thank you, sir. I do believe you've used, the applicant has used up all of their rebuttal time and a little some. I suppose will be the end of tonight's hearing. There's nobody else on Zoom. We've used up all of our time. I have no more questions for staff or the applicant. So 8:01, I'm going to close the public hearing with the small caveat is I would like to receive the NEPA report and just make sure that gets entered in as part of the record. But 8:01, this public hearing is now closed. As a reminder to everyone.